welcome to the West Tigers podcast. This is episode number 307. Gary, Eddie, Steve and Declan on Wednesday night, boys, before the Tigers' opening game of the season. Finally, Steve, it's here. Round 0, round 1. We've had 2 rounds of footy. Tigers haven't played. I'm beginning to wonder what's going on.
Yeah, it's been a long couple of weeks watching everyone else play footy and us just sort of sitting on the sideline waiting for our opportunity. But I'm just hoping that this anticipation, this nervous anticipation, is worth the wait, eh?
We'll see. Saturday at 3 o'clock. Declan, I'm going to ask all three of you your favourite and least favourite thing you've seen over the opening couple of weeks.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's good to be on. I think that my favourite thing in the last couple of weeks in round 1 is probably just the whole Vegas experiment. Looking from afar, it did look quite fun. Looked like it was something that could grow the game into another market. And like if the Tigers were ever to go, I think I'd be quite interested in going to experience it. And plus, I thought the games were good. The ones that were played, like the first game between Manly and South, obviously very high scoring. Then the second game had like a little bit of grit to it. It wasn't as open flowing a little bit towards the end, but I think they were both really good games. So I really enjoyed that. But then the thing I didn't like from the opening rounds is I'm 2 from 8, sorry, in my tipping. Oh God, it was terrible. I think I'm coming third last in my work comp. So hopefully a better week this week.
You've got to wait a little while before going to Vegas though, don't you, Declan? You're not like 21 yet, are you?
I wish I was 21, but unfortunately I'm a little bit older than that now. But yeah,
I think we might be a little bit down the waiting list for teams to go to Vegas, but we'll wait and see. Gary, my favourite thing was actually, in a way, the opposite of Declan. It was the upsets. I think only 2 favourites out of the 8 won. What did you enjoy and not enjoy about the opening 2 weeks of football?
Yeah, I didn't enjoy the upsets because it ruined my tipping completely. I was worse than Declan. I only got 1 right in the entire weekend. But I agree with him. My favourite point was Vegas. I thought that was fantastic. It really... It showed the game on a different sort of level for a start of a season. It was really exciting watching it from afar. And it kind of just built up the start of the season better than any ad campaign we've ever had before. So do away with the ad campaigns and just send a couple of teams off to Vegas. I thought it worked really well. For me, the worst part was no West Tigers. But I think it was your favourite part, Eddie. But missing out on having us play in the first 2 weeks of the competition, it's really felt like a little bit of a drag for me, and it's made that anticipation for our first game kind of get put on the back burner a little bit.
Steve, I've got an early rant for the year. For me, the least favourite thing was the new drop route rule. I thought it was horrendous. I think I shouldn't go off early because some of the things, like the 6 again, I thought early on might be a disaster, that first half of season. But I don't think they've thought about this one because some teams are now just running the ball on the last and prepared to get tackled 10 metres out. The art of finding the in goal is maybe going to go out the window. And then the lack of a penalty for teams that can just kick the ball out of the stadium if they want, go and kick it behind you or whatever. I hate that rule.
Yeah, I don't know, Eddie. Like, it just seems these days that coaching is just so ahead of the game. Whenever a rule change occurs, they find a way around it, a way to manipulate it to suit their own style. So, we'll just have to wait and see, I suppose. But my positive and negative, my positive is a strange one. My positive is St. George, right? I just thought it was great watching them play the way they played. And the reason it was a real positive is because it gives us hope, right? It gives that a team that is relatively unchanged can just turn around their attitude and play so much better. So that was a real positive. And I suppose the negative for me is the gap between the top and the bottom, which is evident after 1 round. Like, those games in Vegas were fast games of football for round 1, and they were awesome to watch, whereas a couple of the games back here in this last weekend were pretty pedestrian, and the difference is pretty stark.
Okay, boys. Well, obviously, a large portion of this podcast will be previewing the Canberra game because there were some surprises in the 17 named by Benji Marshall, but we will get to that. Just one word for tradition. Declan, what's your one word heading into this week, our first game of the season?
I think it's a little bit of dread, to be honest. I just think that after the Dragons game, we just had so long to kind of sit on that result, and like a little bit of negativity has obviously entered the camp, which is understandable. And I just think that, yeah, there's just lots of dread, because if we play anywhere like we played against the Dragons, it's going to be a pretty easy foregone conclusion that we're not going to win the game. But, you know, you never know, as Steve said, you know, you got to go in with like a certain amount of optimism and not be negative. But yeah, I think my first reaction to your question was a little bit of dread, to be honest.
Your word, Gary?
Yeah, finally. I'm just looking forward to us getting out on the field and showing what we can do. Now, I can't really disagree with Declan. I do have that feeling in the pit of my stomach, that sense of worry that can only come with a side that we follow who hasn't made the finals in a dozen years. So that pit is there, and our performance in the trials didn't fill me with any confidence. But we finally get to see whether this side can start to turn things around this weekend. And for me, despite that unease that I'm feeling, that for me is exciting. We get to find out whether it's going to be a season where we start climbing up the ladder, or it's going to be the status quo from what we've seen the last couple of years.
Steve?
Oh, my words, unknown, the great unknown. It's a great week. We're nervous. There's anticipation. We really
Unknown, Steve.
We really just don't know what's going to happen. Yeah, mate.
Top 8, mate.
Mate, the great unknown. We don't know whether they're going to finish first or 8th. We're not sure yet. So the great unknown.
Well, boys, my word is topical because it's our next thing we're going to cover. It's Benji, because they're gunning for him already, Steve. No surprises. The Drongos at the Telegraph, you know, the great Dean Ritchie, who I thought had been retired, but he's made it on TV this year. He wrote an article today saying, you know, Benji's basically a part-time coach and he gets in 3 hours after some of the players. It's definitely different. I don't know if he was outright slagging him. I didn't get a chance to read the whole article, but he's definitely... I did read an article from November, which was a wide-ranging one, where he spoke a little bit about his philosophy. He's obviously had different mentors throughout his career. Wayne Bennett spoke very highly of him, but he's going to do it his own way. Do you see a problem necessarily with things like that? The fact that he might be working less hours than, say, a Craig Bellamy or Ricky Stewart, or guys that live and breathe and do 18-hour days? Or do you think it could be something where he's just got to back himself and he's got to be himself?
Look, any job, any career, any task that you take on, it requires you to put in the time and the effort to do it successfully. That's it. Unless you're doing a job where you clock on at 8 and you clock off at 4 and you have no choice in that, if you've got any choice in the hours you work, it comes down to doing what you've got to do to be successful, because you'll live and die by your success. So Benji needs to do whatever he has to do to be a successful NRL first grade coach. And if that means doing 18 hours a day, that's what he's got to do. If it means balancing, having a healthy balance between work and home life with a young family, and that's what he's got to do. It's whatever works. And so ridiculous articles before a ball's been bowled, or ball's been kicked, saying that he's going to fail because he's not doing that, or he said he wants to have a balance in his life, are ridiculous. Benji just has to work it out as he goes.
It's typical Telegraph clickbait sort of, Declan, but there were some quotes I'll just read from Benji in November, which were interesting because he was obviously a very transformative player and he did things very differently as a player. So I guess it's no surprise that he's going to try and do things a little bit differently as a coach. These were some of his quotes from November. I'm not a typical head coach. I'm away from it. I'm not coaching 24/7. I like people to be themselves. I want to create an environment where people want to be. And he said, I'm coming from playing 20 years in the NRL. I'm going to do things a bit differently to most coaches. But he said the main thing he learnt off Wayne Bennett was it's not all about me. It's about empowering my staff and giving them responsibility and creating an environment where people want to turn up to work. That all sounds fairly reasonable.
And yeah, I think that the thing with tabloid journalism is it's either black and white. There's no in between gray area, and I'm not necessarily sure that I believe Dean Ritchie's sources here about the 3 hours thing. And obviously, it's just so frustrating to me because like I'm going on a bit of a tangent because now on NRL 360 they've said that like if we do struggle, that's going to be the reason why is because Benji Marshall's like not putting in the work, and it's just so annoying because like that could be one of like hundreds of reasons why it's not working. But like the thing with headlines and media is that they've kind of identified this as a problem and they'll just exacerbate it until something like comes to a head. It's just so frustrating because we don't actually know if that's happening for one, and if that's actually a problem as well. Because maybe the players and the staff do like respect that, and they do like to be empowered to do their roles. Because we remember that Michael Maguire was a micromanager, and he was one of those classic coaches that would probably work like 18-hour days, but it just never really like resulted in success. So not necessarily saying that that's the wrong or right thing to do, but yeah, you just have to take it as it comes. And it's just frustrating because I think the article was a like classic kind of tabloid kind of journalism.
I guess the problem he's going to have, Gary, is that if they roll out performances like they do against St George, like Declan said, they're just going to roll with that narrative, which will test a young coach, because he hasn't, even though he was apparently doing a lot of the coaching last year, he didn't have to put up with any of this side of it, which is the rubbish articles, the conjecture, the speculation, stuff that goes with sides when you're not performing.
We were talking last week about Benji, and we spoke about that Benji's going to do things his own way. Benji's going to do Benji things. And if this is something that works for him and works for the team, and he's able to put the structures in place around him for it to be successful, then all power to him. I can't really put it any better than Steve did. Basically, it's not a problem if we're winning games. Whatever he wants to do, as long as we're winning games or we're improving, then none of this is going to be an issue. So let's see what happens over the first couple of weeks and see where it builds from there. And maybe he has to make a decision at some point to be a little bit more conventional and do a coach in a way that's similar to what other people have in the past. But we're not at that point yet. And that will be a decision for him to make, and his career will ride on that decision.
That's the thing, Steve. He's going to be learning sort of on the run. So I'm sure he comes into it with ideas, but it'll only be tested through, the 80 minutes we see in Canberra and throughout the season. I mean, there were times last year where I was a little bit critical. I remember, I think he went away. He wasn't officially the head coach, but he spent a week in Fiji when we're on our bye. Now, that's probably fine if you come back the next week and the team performs well. But when you get beaten 74-0 by the Cowboys, it's sort of not the best look.
No, and I think you just nailed it there, Eddie. That's the thing he's got to have more than anything, I believe, and that's just a learning mindset. He can bring in that 20 years of experience, like that he's going to use that for sure, and he can dig into that and find experiences that he's had over his career that are going to help him as a coach. But essentially, he's at the beginning of another journey. And as long as he accepts that and has his eyes wide open and his ears wide open, and he's looking and listening and learning from his mistakes and picking up on everything, and that's the time. Well, that could be laying in bed at night, just thinking through how the training session went, or how the week went, or how the game went, and he's got to learn constantly and continually, and just keep taking in everything to form his own path. And from what everyone says, he's smart enough to do that. So hopefully he does.
Declan, he's got obviously a fairly inexperienced coaching staff around him. Obviously, I suppose John Morris is the exception, having done probably 18 months as head coach at Cronulla and a number of years as an assistant at South. Do you see the overall inexperience in the coaching team with Hino and Robbie as a big problem, or potentially, could be something where the players maybe seem a little bit happier than when they were? Because there's no denying when, as hard as Madge tried and everything that he did try, he looked exhausted by the end of it and it didn't work.
Yeah, I think that no matter what, like the assistant coaches, it never usually falls on them, does it? It's always on the head coach. So I think the team is going to live and breathe by like the results that Benji brings, and he's going to wear the brunt. If we win, it's going to be up. It's going to be him. If we lose, it's going to be him. So I'm not too concerned. I don't really think the inexperience in the assistant coaches matters to a great degree in that sense, because like Benji's the head coach and he's the one who has to make these decisions. That's why he is the head coach. I think John Morris, we've obviously talked about before, I think he's the guy that he does bring that experience that's really beneficial. But yeah, I think that Benji's going to be the one that's going to have to wear these results.
It's interesting, Gary, because I mean, I've worked with not professional athletes like rugby league players, but guys that want to get to that level, but in a different sport. And there's no doubt that the kids these days are different. And from what I've seen at a semi-pro sort of level, they don't like necessarily, the grind of being, watching 3 hours of video and being micromanaged and, being told to do this at this time and this. Obviously, it's whole another level, the NRL. But do you think he's maybe taking some experiences from perhaps the back end of his career when he played under Madge, and then when he played under someone like Wayne Bennett, who is not known to be, hands on the training field and up at 4 or 5 in the morning? Do you think maybe it's lessons learned throughout his career?
Well, I think you made a couple of really good points there. I think the first one's about the younger generation of players. I think it's fairly common knowledge that they're not as actively engaged in football as much as players tended to be in the past. A lot of them support other sports, like the amount of players that are on social media talking about the NBA and the NFL and how engaged in that. A lot of the players would probably say that the rugby league probably isn't even their favorite sport. So that sort of situation where a player lived and breathed rugby league, I don't think that's as commonplace nowadays as it was in the past. And maybe Benji, with a little bit more of a laid back kind of attitude towards coaching, maybe that can work for some of those younger players, and his ability to interact with a player who isn't constantly watching or engaging in football. There's a number of players who you'll hear interviewed who don't watch other games. They would much rather be watching other sports, and that's probably something that Benji can relate to in this part of his life at least. So I think that there could be a bit of a touchstone. And I do agree. I think that experience with the intensity of Michael Maguire would really play a role in how Benji wants to go about this. Most people talk about Wayne Bennett as being that man manager type of person who isn't that actively involved in setting the game plans and setting all those sort of things. He's more about making the individual feel comfortable and getting the best out of them by making them feel valued and included and creating that inclusive environment. Lots of players talk about Wayne Bennett in that role and how he was a father figure to them. And so it wasn't just about the football. And the whole time since Benji Marshall has spoken about coming across and being a coach, I thought he would be modeling himself on Wayne Bennett. There seems to be a lot of respect between the two of them. So I wouldn't be at all surprised if that's the kind of route he is taking.
Not a bad mentor to have, Steve, is it, Wayne Bennett? I guess the issue for Benji is going to be, Wayne Bennett's got 7 premierships behind him. So if he wants to, not even watch a training session and just oversee it and then come down at the end and speak to a few of the guys, obviously one of his huge strengths, I think, is how much the players love and respect him just outside of football. And I think Benji could potentially get that level of respect. And I think that's the path he's going down. But the point I'm making is it's almost like perception can be reality. And if we start, it might be an easier thing to try and do if you're at a club with a talented roster that, no disrespect to our guys, but we've been at the bottom for a couple of years. So I can just see the clickbait journalists running with this throughout the year if we're struggling.
Like you just mentioned, it might be an easy thing to do at a stronger club. I reckon it's an easier thing to do when you're at the end of your coaching career as opposed to at the beginning of your coaching career. Like the Wayne Bennett we see today isn't the Wayne Bennett that we would have seen when he started his coaching. And I'm sure he was would have been much more hands-on at the beginning of his career. Well, he would have, because back then they wouldn't have had
One coach.
Yeah, that's right. They wouldn't have had the team of people around them to start with. So, in a way, Wayne Bennett has earned the right to coach the way he coaches now. Well, he's done the hard yards. He's got the information in his head. He's got the respect of people through multiple premiership wins. Benji hasn't got that yet. So Benji's still got to go through all that. So the hard work is definitely there. You can't get away from the fact that the guy's going to have to work hard. But, you know, I don't think he's adverse to that. I don't think he's saying that. I think he's just trying to say he wants to have a balanced approach to his coaching life and his life outside of coaching. And that's probably for his own well-being, but it's probably also sending a message to his players, a young group, right? Well, there's a mixture in the group, but primarily a young group of players making their way. And I think he might be trying to say, you know what, you guys need to get away from footy, because if you live in the game 24/7, it's going to do your head in. That's probably, you know, pretty smart.
I mean, that's a fair point, Declan. It's that he's, you know, if he's been around the boys obviously last season and at times under Madge, I think he might have come back under Cleary as well. And there's no doubt that the level of media scrutiny and social media is completely different these days. So even in like the UK, it's a model that's probably a little bit more prevalent, I think, over in UK soccer and sport like that, where the manager itself isn't necessarily there from 5 a.m. in the morning till 5 a.m. or 5 p.m. at night. It's sort of more an overseeing role, and he seems to be saying that he wants to put trust in John Morris as defensive coach and Robbie as attacking coach. I think he said Heino's working on specific the forward and effort areas, and he's just going to oversee things. Do you think it's going to be? It could potentially catch on, or you know, it's creatures of habit over here. The guys who've obviously, I can't think of a coach off the top of my head. I don't know, obviously, the hours I work, but they all seem like footy heads, the Craig Bellamy's, the Trent Robinsons, Ivan Cleary's, all those guys.
Well, it's interesting you talk about Craig Bellamy, because I remember Harry Grant was interviewed on the Matty John show a few years ago, and he was asked what the difference between Michael Maguire and Craig Bellamy was, and he said that Michael Maguire was actually really like detailed orientated into his game and really broke down the game, but Craig Bellamy was kind of more of a just bigger picture kind of thing in terms of the game plan of the Storm. And that, like, he actually got a lot from Michael Maguire because he really responded to that kind of like breakdown in his game and that attention to detail. But it just comes to show you that, you know, maybe Craig Bellamy as well is like just over like the kind of big macro details of the footy club rather than like the nitty gritty of the day to day. Because I think it's already kind of going that way, especially with American sport. If you look at the NFL, you know, they've got coaches for coaches. You know, there's lots of like specialist coaching going around these days in professional sport. And, you know, I think that although, you know, like people like to paint a picture that, you know, guys like Shane Flanagan, you know, built the gym at Cronulla by themselves because, you know, they just had to like have everything. I think that professional sport is going in the direction of specialist coaching for him and the coaching staff.
It's interesting though, Steve. I don't want to go off on a tangent about these, you know, pathetic journalists and their agendas and stuff. But I mean, you would have thought, you know, Shane Flanagan's won a grand final. The way I listened to it this week, I know they beat the Titans and they did look good in both their trials games. But I just find it interesting. Like Benji worked on that particular show I'm talking about for a couple of years, but you know, Paul Kent and stuff, they seem to be against him straight away before he's even lost a game.
Yeah, it's just you know, same old story, isn't it? Into a new year, and let's get into the West Tigers again. I said it the other day in the last pod I did that the journos these days, they're just so cliched. They really are. You know, when the Rabbits win, it's all because of Latrell Mitchell, no matter what. When Manly play well, it's all because of Trbojevic, no matter what. You know, and look, sometimes that's right, but they just don't. They don't analyse anything with any depth. They just go for the quick and easy grab, and you know, the Tigers are a quick and easy grab. But we go on about this over and over and over again. The bottom line now is we just got to win some football games and shove it up these blokes, you know, so they can't make fun of us on these shows and they can't write these garbage articles about us. If we start winning football games, start getting some respect back as a football team and a football club, then these guys have got nowhere to go. But yeah, they're just cheap journalists.
You always tell me, Gary, not to get roped into watching these shows at the start of the year.
Yeah, well, I think I watched about half an episode of NRL 360 while they were in Vegas, and that's still all I've seen. Has it been on this week? I don't.
Yeah,
but no
it's
interest
on.
in.
Can I say, right? Like, I wasn't going to mention this, right? It's like, you know, when, like, if I start a diet, I don't tell anyone, because then when I break it for 3 days' time, no one is going to have broken it. Right? But I actually got up from 360 tonight and just turned it off and just said, I'm not watching this rubbish anymore.
So
And I
you
thought,
started to follow my advice, Steve?
well, I don't want.
It's only taken it like 5 years.
Perhaps. But I turned it off, and I just thought there's just no credibility to it. And I was going to say I'm not going to watch it at all, but I know I won't be able to keep that. But they don't deserve it. They don't.
The game, boys. Let's talk about the game, because Tuesday 4:00, Declan, there were, you know, a number of surprises. I guess definitely more than one for me. It was a couple of rumours Monday that it might be that way. What most surprised you about that 17?
I mean, it was tough because there was rumours on Monday that Lachlan Galvin was going to be named. So by the time Tuesday came along, I think we were all kind of expecting it. I think it would have been more of a surprise if he wasn't named to start. But yeah, I think that's the obvious one, because I think I, for one, thought he was going to come off the bench. But to start round one, like as an 18-year-old, I think it's a bad call by Benji. And then Fatapi as well in the centres, because I think we all kind of thought Olam was going to be right for round one, but unfortunately he's still like resting that knee that apparently he picked up in
round four. Round four is not available too.
Well, so Fatapi, that was another interesting one. But other than that, I think it was kind of what we all predicted, Safar 13. I'm really happy Samuel Afinu is on the bench as well. I think he's someone who's going to come leaps and bounds this year, hopefully. But yeah, just I think Lachlan Galvin for sure. Like the obvious one is like the correct one in this circumstance. I think him being there, I think it just shows that, you know, he's really impressed this off season. I'm keen to see how he goes.
Gary, I'll ask you the same question, but to go with that, you know, in terms of what you think was the most surprising, but why also do you think Benji has opted for those two halves? Because I struggle to think it's purely based on preseason effort, because that's what he preached, as you would as a coach back in November. But from what I've heard, you know, Caesar's been the ultimate pro. I think it might be a little bit around speed in the team and worried about a little bit of lack of speed, maybe in the outside backs, and trying to make up for that potentially in the halves.
Look, for me, I did kind of I wanted Galvin picked at 5'8" for round one, so I didn't see that overly surprising. But Sullivan being the halfback, and especially Caesar not being dropped but being on the bench, those two decisions there were the ones that really jumped out at me. Now, my only guess for why you'd go that way, we've spoken ad nauseum about our ability to get down the field and get into attacking positions last year. For me, if you're going for Sullivan and Galvin, who we didn't really see, we saw a little bit of them playing together, but I thought if that was kind of your plan heading into the round one, you'd want two young guys like that spending a lot more time together in the trials than they did. But for me, I think it's a worry about still being able to open up defences in that 20. If you're going for Jayden Sullivan and Lachlan Galvin as your halves pairing, you're looking for an attacking pairing compared to having Caesar there. You're looking for someone who can open up the defensive line. And I can understand that because of what we saw last year. We were able to get ourselves in a good field position, and we spoke all season about how our halves' lack of creativity, it was our biggest problem last season. So going with Sullivan and Galvin, who have two very attacking halves, I can see why you'd go down that angle considering what we saw last year. But Caesar being on the bench is the one that throws me a little bit, because you've either got him there as an insurance policy because you're worried it won't work, which I don't really want to be going in with a halve on the bench as an insurance policy, or it means you're looking to do a shuffle. And I really don't like it when sides shuffle their spine around. I don't like it like a team to bring on a halfback and push the guy playing halfback to hooker so you can give your hooker a rest. I don't really want to see us doing that, because it just messes around with the structure of your team and your ability to play consistent attacking football. And if you were going to do that, I would have thought that maybe you start with Caesar and then bring Sullivan on later to kind of open up defenses and go with the sure and safe guy to start with. So I've got a lot of question marks around that decision, but I'm really looking forward to see how it plays out on Saturday. I'm really looking forward to seeing how Sullivan and Galvin can play together and their ability to open up defenses inside that 20. I think it's going to be a really interesting thing on Saturday night.
Steve, were you as surprised as, I guess, us that no Caesar in the starting side?
Yeah, I was. I thought he was sort of almost first picked. But, Benji's, shown his hand there. I think it's interesting. I reckon the reason, I think that you guys have covered it pretty well, but I think just an additional factor is the Canberra pack are such a big pack, and to get that speed around the ruck in your halves, to try to get a retreat in defence and catch them off guard and tire those big boppers out for Canberra. There's probably something in that as well.
Declan, you know what Canberra's game plan is going to be. It's going to be to get at the young kid and get at him early. So surely this is, I don't know if, I assume Lockie Galvin probably line up on the left. So if IPAP plays on that side, I think this is the biggest game of his Tigers career. He's got to be his bodyguard in defence because they're going to be coming at him and they've got some big guys in that pack.
I think IPAP is playing on the right side, so I think it's going to be
John Bateman. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's going to be John Bateman. Yeah, look, obviously, I think that they're going to be running all the traffic at Lachlan Galvin, and vice versa. I think we're going to be running all the traffic at Ethan Strange, who's their inexperienced half as well. But I think that's just what's going to happen when you blood, a young 18-year-old. Like, they're just going to run at him, and like, to his credit, like, he's definitely not a liability in defence from what I've seen. He's kind of, obviously he's going to miss some tackles because of his age and experience, but yeah, I think like everyone just has to get around him just to make sure that he's supported and he can just worry about his game. But I think John Bateman, he's going to do a good job outside of him, hopefully.
I had a look. This will surprise you, Gary. I had a look at his Instagram profile, Lachlan Galvin. He's got 700 followers, so it's very much an unknown. My prediction for the weekend is he's going to treble that by the end of Saturday. I don't think many, even Tigers fans, obviously the rusted-on guys like us that follow the preseason, but how do you think he's going to go on Saturday?
I'm hopeful. I'm hoping, as I know you are, that he's going to be our next player to really step through and become one of the better players in the NRL. That's the hope. And what he's shown in the trials, albeit for a little bit of time, was that he's ready to make that step up to the NRL. But a trial is very different to an NRL game proper, and it's going to be really interesting to see how he handles the extra spotlight, how he handles that extra pressure, and whether he can transition his game, what we saw in the trials, into an NRL game for 80 minutes against a really big, dominant forward pack. It's going to be really interesting to see how he transitions his game to the NRL. Really excited to see him play. I wanted him picked at 5'8", and we all get our chance on Saturday night to see if he really is ready for the big lights of the NRL.
Steve, the back line, it just doesn't fill me with a lot of confidence on paper or from what I've seen in the trials. What can they do? What can they do to alleviate my concerns besides play well?
They have to start their sets well. That to me is the big thing. If we're talking about the back line, like Charlie Staines and Junior Tupu, they were poor at starting the sets and bringing the ball back, and Stafford Toa hasn't exactly set the world on fire either. So, they're the only guy in that, like that 3/4 line that's done anything in the trials is Fatape. And that was really, that was a trial, and he had a lot of space. He had a lot of space, and he wasn't jammed in that game. He made most of his chances, but he had a lot of space to move around in. So I'm worried about that. They've got to bring the ball back. Well, they've got to start the sets well, make ground in those early tackles to allow us to get downfield. Outside of that, well, our halves have got to use their assets, right? Like Lockie Galvin has shown briefly that he's got that he can run players onto the ball. He seems to be a good communicator. He seems to be able to get runners in motion. So we've got to get that moving. And Jaden Sullivan has got attacking flair, right? So he's got I think he's probably got to be a little bit selfish. If he sees an opportunity, go for it, right? And if it doesn't work, stick at it. That's what I reckon.
Anyone in that back line, Declan, that you'd like to really see up their game, or someone that you're worried about? I mean, Sullivan, I think, is also a spot player for opposition. I'm not sure which centre he's going to be defending next to, but we're a little bit worried about our edge defence this weekend.
Yeah, I think Sullivan, he was brought to the club because he's just at that age where he needs to start, because performing consistently in first grade. So we've got Galvin and Latu Fanu, who are kind of young players, probably 12 months away from playing week in, week out footy where they're consistent enough to win games. So Sullivan, for sure, he's really got to step up, and he's really got to find that consistency that we didn't quite see in the trials. So hopefully him playing halfback gives him more control of the team and more authority to kind of go out there and get the game. I think sometimes he can just kind of pass it on the inside to his forwards, run under another forward, and just not really take the game. So hopefully playing 7 kind of brings him onto the ball more. But I think, I'm not sure if it's because of you in the group chat, but I think I'm really hoping that Jurian Bula doesn't have second year syndrome. I think if he has a really good game, kind of puts to bed some of the noise. Although I do think he's a good player, I would just love to see him have a
Where
really
is that noise coming from, Declan?
I don't know, just from the streets, I hear. Just people from the streets are this is what they're saying, apparently.
Well, you guys had him. I'll bring it up because I may as well, because Declan's always putting me in trouble. So I said last week that I thought, I didn't say Tyrell Slow was a better player than Jurian Bula. I said potentially his ceiling could be higher because of some of his attributes, which is notably number 1, his speed. Obviously, Jurian Bula has performed more consistently last year in the NRL, but it's something where I want to see it. I haven't seen it yet with his attack consistently, that he can worry sides and become potentially a top 4 or 5 fullback in the NRL. I know he's been very good defensively. He's been safe, which is probably the opposite of what you expect from a young fullback. I just think for him to potentially go to that next level, he's got to have a lot more influence on our attack, Declan.
Yeah, and also for the record, I wasn't trying to throw you under the bus there. Last week I was, when I brought up what you said in the chat, so I'll pay that, but not this time. But yeah, I think that with Jurian Bula, it's just what kind of prototypical player do you think he is? Because someone like Tyrell Sloan, yes, he can score through tries, but he can also very easily let 3 in. And he's got that electric pace, kind of like Reece Walsh. But then someone like Jurian Bula, you could really see someone like Dylan Edwards. I think that's a pretty good player comparison. And Dylan Edwards, he's not the flashiest guy. He's not going to necessarily worry teams with his raw ability, but he's just so consistent and so reliable, and he's a core of that Penrith team. So it just depends on what you're kind of comparing him to.
I just don't want to see him. I thought, Steve, maybe last year, probably fairly for a rookie, I thought those last 8 games he sort of hit the wall. I just want to see him busier in attack. I think the best fullbacks are all those guys that are constantly on the move, looking behind forwards, looking for offloads. I thought last year there were games where he's pretty quiet in attack. I know I'm being harsh because he is one of our better players, and I've got high hopes for him. But I just think if he's going to step it up, and our attack's going to be any sort of threat, he needs to be a more constant on the ball.
Yeah, I think he does. I agree with it. Everything's been said there. I think defensively, he's just been such an asset. Attacking wise, he's good, but yeah, he does need to be more involved. But he's playing in a team that came last, and he's playing in a team this weekend with new halves. And let's hope that he gets more opportunity with those halves present him with more opportunities. I agree with Declan. He's probably not going to play the Reece Walsh sort of game. With that much effect, maybe he will. But I haven't sort of seen that in him yet. But what I can see him doing is chiming into the back line and using his athleticism to either beat a man or draw a man and set a man up outside and create numbers. That's where I can see him being really effective. And I'm with you, Eddie. I'd like to see him doing more of that. but he needs a team that's going forward and getting ball out wide fast to give him the opportunity to do that.
The issue is we've spoken about the centers and the outside backs that we've gone with this weekend. Their kind of lack of experience and lack of effectiveness so far in the trials really places a lot of pressure on a new young halves pairing that we're going with. We need Dream Buller to really stand up because he's the best support for those halves that we have in the side this weekend. For a guy who's 18 and is making his debut at 5'8", it's not like he's got a guy like Jamie Lyon playing outside him who he can give the ball to and will be there as support. He's got Stafford Toa and Fatape playing outside him in the centres. That's not a great lot of support for a guy in his first game at 5'8". So I'm not as hard on Dream Buller as Eddie seems to be at times. But we do need a big year from him this year. We do need him taking his game to another level, which is really hard to say because he played, 15 games last year and won every single award at our club. He had a great year last year. He set up tries, he scored tries, he saved a lot of tries. Plus was very safe. But for us to have any form of success this year, for us to improve, when you have a look at the players that he has around him, we really need him to stand up in that back line because he's actually one of the more experienced players in our back line, despite having only played 15 games. And that's going to be a little bit of a worry. We need him carrying a huge weight this year, and hopefully he can. And that's what's going to take his game to another level, is despite carrying that weight that he has on his back this year, that he's able to be effective. And that's the big one I'm looking for this year.
So, mate, we talked about this last time when you and I, Gary, on the pod about that multiple points of attack and that we're just not showing any. There's no reason for a defensive line to be worried about us because there's no multiple threats. And you're right. So you're saying, Gary, that Dream's got to sort of shoulder a little bit of that responsibility, and that's right. But I want to put it on our back rowers too. I want to put it on Bateman.
100%. They've got the experience.
Yeah, exactly right, mate. Because you're just saying, Dream Buller's the guy with the experience. Well, compared to the experience Papali'i and Bateman have got, and they are wide running back rowers, they are out wide. If they get good ball out there, they've got to show some dominance too, and not just leave it to a what was it? What did we say? 12-game veteran.
15, around 15 he played. He debuted in round 10 last year.
Might have played more. I reckon he debuted round 6, played 18 games.
That multiple points of attack is so important in today's game, I reckon, and we haven't been showing it. And some of these experienced blokes have got to stand up a little bit, I reckon.
But that's kind of why. That's kind of why I think Benji's probably gone for Sullivan and Galvin, because they are at least attacking threats and probably more of an attacking threat than a 32, 33-year-old Aiden Caesar's going to be. So when you have a look at the guys they got playing outside them, they need to be creative. So maybe that's just the reasoning around it. And you are exactly right. But second rowers nowadays play like the old inside centers. They're the guys, like it's a very similar position nowadays in football. So that experience those two have and their effort areas and their support of those players around them is really crucial to how we're going to go this year.
Just a random sort of question, Gary. Looking at just the body shapes of teams, if you were starting a side from scratch and you're looking to build like a prototype winger or centre or back rower, do you think we've sort of either got our recruitment a little bit wrong or our body shapes are a little? Because I watched Canterbury, and that like Matt Burton and a couple of them are getting a lot of heat, but they had no hope. They've got no forwards. We've obviously got better forwards than them, but they've also got wingers that struggle to get out of their own end. Penrith seem to be like quite an undersized backline, but then you've got that Toa who just runs for 230 metres. But I get jealous of like a team like St. George, even St. George, who are meant to finish bottom 4, but they've got Ravalawa, even Lomax is quite a big body. They've got Moses Sully, big outside backs, even that Parramatta winger, Sivo. I just think that's an area we're really going to struggle.
Yeah, definitely. I think Declan and Steve have both pointed it out a number of times over the last couple of weeks. Our ability to start sets off well coming out of our own end, due to our ineffective wingers in that area during the trials, is a real concern this year. And really, when you have a look at our centres, there's not a lot of support there for them as well. I think Toa can probably help out there a little bit, and I can understand an argument that some people have made about putting Toa on the wing to help get our set started. But he's still not a Brian Toto or a Moses Sully that you can really use in that role. But we haven't had much luck with those sort of players either. When you have a look at the big outside backs we've had over the last 5 to 10 years, you're looking at guys like Moses Sully, who was too busy sleeping in his car, and Lalia, who really didn't put in for us at all. So, yeah, we need to find them.
Is that Leilua's brother?
Joey Leilua.
Leilua. Sorry,
Joey
I did
Leilua's
draw a
brother,
blank.
Leilua.
Lalia. Look, don't
I think
you
we did
talk
have someone
ravioli.
called Leilua who scored 4 tries one day in
Yeah,
2014.
Keith Lalia.
Keith
Yeah.
Lalia, but he put in that day, Gary. But Declan, the forward pack, I guess, no real surprises. The only, I guess, 50-50 one was Seyfarth starting at lock. He's obviously, Canberra's one of the more physical sides. They do have 1 or 2 injuries, I think. I'm not sure if Elliot Whitehead's back yet, but what are you expecting from Alex Seyfarth?
I don't know, it was just like a tale of 2 games, wasn't it? He was so good against the Warriors, who were like a pretty big pack, even though it wasn't like full strength. But then, he did struggle in the second game. I don't know. I'm just hoping that I'm sure he's just going to make his tackles. Like, hopefully we can get some sort of productivity with his carries. I'm not 100% confident though, because that Raiders pack is like quite good. They're quite vicious. They've got some big bodies. They've got like really good variation. They've got some powerful athletes, but then they've got some kind of skillful players like Hudson Young. But then they've also got kind of some workhorses as well, as opposed to us who kind of just have workhorses at the moment. Unless Stefano is in form, then he can be that management prop. But there's not that much variety in our forward pack. But I think they've got a little bit of. They just kind of cover the field for me, and I think it's going to be a tough ask for our team.
Any points on the forward pack, Steve?
Yeah, I suppose my question is, we've all made the point, I think, that having Twal and Seyfarth in the same 17 is maybe a concern. I had a bit of a think about that, and I looked at the forward pack and who was available. I thought, well, who else do you pick?
Yeah.
Where else do we go with our forwards? Like, I actually like the way this forward pack rotation is set up. I like the fact that Pole is not starting at 13, and I like the fact that he's going to come on the prop rotation because he's a big body, and hopefully when we take off Stefano or Clemmer and he comes on, it'll be a like for like replacement. And Samuel Fainu in the 17, he's a big body too, and we're going to need our big bodies. We're going to need our big bodies working hard against this Canberra pack. So I sort of think they've come up with the best pack and the rotation as best as we can. Do you guys agree with that?
Do we think Seyfarth plays 80 minutes at lock? Because that's going to be a little bit of an interesting one.
He will play 80 minutes.
Okay. The good news for you, Steve, is I know you get a bit, I can lose the plot occasionally during games, but the good news, I know you have an ambush event, and I'm disappointed I can't make it, but my cricket side that I coach is in a quarter final this weekend. So the good news for you is I will be watching it on my phone, and I can easily turn my phone off if things are going pear-shaped. But I can see you going crazy if Fogarty starts putting up kicks and we don't defuse them. I think that's the way that Canberra, that's how they won last week. I didn't think they were very impressive. They beat Newcastle away, which was a big win for them, but all their tries came off Fogarty kicks. I didn't think they looked very clinical or dangerous in attack.
Look, firstly, Eddie, I am perfectly happy for you to be as emotional as you want to be during a game.
Careful saying that, Steve. I'll step it up another notch.
I don't know that's possible, but you go for it, right? I would. what you said about Canberra, and I thought this when you said it last week. Canberra always look like that. Canberra always look out of sorts to me.
Yep.
They never look fluent. They never look like they're going to rip a team apart. But they just win football games, you know. They're a tough side. They just get down the field and then they kick well. They either kick deep into corners well and then put on a good chase, or their attacking kicks in the 20 zone are really effective, and they score a lot of points from kicks. So, yeah, you're right. I'm going to lose it big time if we don't diffuse our kicks, because we've been doing it forever, and this is one of the worst teams we can play, off the top of my head, in trying to diffuse our kicks, because they will come at us a lot.
Especially those short dropouts. I can see Steve losing the plot if some of those short dropouts, when we get a 6 again and we don't get the ball back. I can just visualise that happening on Saturday. But time for a prediction, boys. So give me a score and where you think the game will be won. Declan.
I think the Raiders are going to win at 20 points to 8, and I think it's going to be won with their big forwards offloading the ball.
Well, that's a positive start to you, Declan. Thanks for that, Gary.
Yeah, look, first round, anything can happen. Well, second round for us. So I'm going to tip the Tigers. It's going to be a close one. I think we'll get away 20-18. And Sullivan and Galvin to show that we can open up defences inside the 20.
Steve, your prediction?
Yeah, well, I've got to go Tigers. It's round one. I can't go
Round 2, Steve.
Sorry, Declan?
It's round 2, Steve. So.
Oh, round 2. Well, it's round 1 for us, but you're right.
He's the Grinch tonight,
Yeah,
Declan.
oh, geez, you can tell who the lawyer is in the room. Fair dinkum.
Big hello to Lee as well.
Yeah.
In this podcast.
Who?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the Tigers, they'll have to win it in the forward pack. If they're going to win it, they have to win it in the forward pack, and we have to get off our defensive line really quickly to stop their forwards getting momentum. So if we're going to win, it's on the back of our forwards getting off the line quickly in defence, and I'm going to say 22-20 Tigers.
And no waiting in defence on our try line like we were saying in the trials. That's
No.
like, come on, guys.
I don't think that's a tactic, Gary, to wait on defence. But we'll wait and see. Maybe we'll see it again this week.
It looked like it against St. George. It looked like they've been training it all off-season.
I know I've been negative in the preseason, but I've got a funny feeling we're going to turn up and we're going to flog Canberra this week. I'm going 38-24 Tigers. I just get the feeling, I know Gary's looking at me like I'm standing on my head, but I think this is the psychology of rugby league, where a team gets flogged. It's all bad headlines. They've done nothing. Canberra, on the other hand, they've gone to Newcastle and are feeling very good about themselves. Now they look at the draw and they think, oh, we've got the Tigers at home. How easy. We're going to be top of the table, 2-0. I reckon we're going to blow them away. I'm going 38-24. I'm going Lachlan Galvin. Man of the match, Gary. And
Who is this? Who is this Eddie Otto? Like, where has he been all off season?
You would remember, or you might not remember, but once or twice a year, I think I predicted us to beat. Obviously, I think I predicted us to beat the Panthers once at Leichhardt Oval, where I just got a funny feeling, and this is sort of that funny feeling.
Feeling it in your bones?
I'm not saying we're going to make the top 8. I'm still predicting we're going to come last, but I'm predicting this is going to be a good weekend. Steve, it's going to be a good weekend for you because you are watching the game with the boys at West Ashfield.
Yeah, we've got our first ambush event for the year on this Saturday at West Ashfield, as you just said. We've got the State Cup, which is on Fox at 12:40, so that'll be on the big screen.
The what cup?
The State Cup. Is it State Cup?
Oh, State Cup. Sorry, I thought you called it the Fate Cup.
No. State Cup reserve grade. That's what I like.
Reserve grade. Yeah.
And that's on at 12:40. So the Magpies will be playing in that against the Raiders. Our event starts at 2:00. We're going to have the West Tigers podcast panel discussion up there, and we'll involve the crowd as we always do in that. We're going to do a review of the off season and all the dramas that happened in the off season, and also do a preview of the game. We've got West Ashfield will be really generous. We've got $4 $50 food vouchers to give away on the day. There's your half price pizza and cheap beer up until halftime during the first grade game, and so I just encourage everyone to come along to West Ashfield anytime after 12:40, but officially at 2 o'clock, and join in the ambush event. And can I just keep going a bit, Eddie? I also want to mention we've got 3 weeks in a row, just for people to keep in mind. Round 6 against when the Tigers play the Dragons out at Campbelltown. The ambush have got a beer shed event at Lamia before the game. There'll be more details of that coming up in round 7, when we've got our bus trip to Bathurst when the Tigers play the Panthers at Bathurst on the 20th of April. That's, if you can get your tickets on all our socials, just get onto the socials and click on there and get your ticket for the bus to all go together down out to Bathurst. And then again in round 8, we're back at the beer shed at Lamia before the game against the Broncos out at Campbelltown. So round 6, 7 and 8. 3 events that everyone can join us in and follow the Tigers together. But most importantly, this Saturday at West Ashfield to watch the game against the Raiders.
Excellent. Thank you, Steve. Gary, you are in charge of the quiz because I am doing this podcast on my phone tonight, and I'm not trusting my phone to physically go and check the quiz that Yachty sent us. So you're in charge.
Yes, look, tell the truth. We all know, we've all seen it. Declan's been whinging about not being able to beat me in the group chat. So I've been shafted the hosting because Declan wants to have a chance of winning one. Is that right, Declan?
I would never admit defeat, so that's clearly wrong. I think all the listeners know that I would never admit that you beat me. So
admitting's one thing. So Yachty's once again sent through some questions for us. So using your name, boys, the first one is a multiple choice question. In the original 2020 draw pre-COVID-19 alterations, where was the West Tigers home game against the Raiders meant to be played at?
Eddie.
A, Leichhardt Oval. B, Campbelltown. C, Parramatta, Combank Stadium. Or D, Tamworth, Scully Park.
Did you say 2020 or 2019, Gary?
2020, the pre-COVID draw.
Well, you'd think it'd be Tamworth. Knowing Yachty, it's probably a curveball, though. I'll go Tamworth.
And Eddie would be correct. So Eddie's off to a great start leading our quiz. Question 2. Now, you don't have to name them, and it's a closest to the pin answer. How many West Tigers players have had the word son in their first or last name? So closest to the pin. So they have the word son, S-O-N, in their first or last name.
Come on, Declan. This should be one for you. Sonny Bill Williams, he didn't play for us, did he?
I wish he did.
Declan's been sharking people by letting them go first, so you can give the first answer, Declan.
Okay, I'm going to go...
Hudson. Was there a Hudson somewhere?
You don't have to name them. Just need how many players?
I'm gonna go 5.
5 for Declan. Steve.
I'll do a Gary and go 6.
Yeah, I'll go 4.
And Steve gets it. It's actually 18 players.
You want to read them out, Gary, or we won't go?
He didn't actually give me all their names, so I don't know all of them.
Okay.
But the
third question,
he may have just made it up. The third question is off the back of that one. Out of those 18 players, who is the only one of those whose first and last names ends with the same word, son?
Any clues, please, Gary?
He played for both sides playing in our game this weekend.
He played for both sides. What do you mean by that?
Well, he played for the Raiders. He played for the Tigers.
Oh. Played for the Raiders, played for the Tigers.
Bronson Harrison?
That would be correct, Declan.
Oh, Declan. That's a good one.
That's very good, Declan.
That's a good one. You weren't even alive when Bronson Harrison was playing.
So 1 apiece for the boys. A nice tight quiz here. See, Eddie, I remember to count the actual scores, mate.
Scores. You can have this role, Gary, if you want.
No, not particularly, because then I wouldn't be winning every week. Question 4. What was the full-time score when our West Tigers travelled to Canberra and knocked the Raiders out of the 2010 final series? What a game that was. That was fantastic.
Oh, I know it was a 2-point game, Gary, because Jared Croker missed the kick at the end. I'm going to go 22-20 West Tigers.
Incorrect.
I'm going to go
Close.
18-16.
Incorrect. Come on, Steve.
2018.
2018. It was 26-24. I'm not giving you any of that. I'm not even doing closest. But yeah, for me, that was a great game. Jared Croker right in front, 20 metres out.
Mm.
And
Are you doing the quiz or running the commentary?
Mate, I can multitask just because you can't do.
Not well. Not well.
And question 5, which is the last question, and we are still all tied up at 1 apiece. So whoever gets this wins the quiz. So you're in with a chance this week, Steve. It's a who am I question. Now there are 2 answers to this who am I question. So who am I? It was April Fool's Day and round 7 of the 2001 NRL season. So you're in trouble, Declan. Our West Tigers were hosting the Green Machine at Campbelltown. Bill Harrigan was the referee.
I know it's going to... this is where he gave the stupid try. Darren Senna scored it.
Hassan Saylor was making his NRL debut. First part of the who am I, which infamous West Tigers player was also making their first grade debut and scored 2 tries?
That was the winger, formerly known as Jackson Kafusi.
That would be correct. And the second part of it, and in the same game, which Raider and future West Tigers player scored a hat-trick?
Surely Todd Payton didn't score a hat-trick. Future West Tigers player. What position, Gary?
Leilua around then?
Was a centre?
Centre.
Leilua, Joey Leilua.
No,
This is 2001, Steve. Joey Leilua.
2001.
Oh, so
Played 22 games for the West Tigers in 2006.
2006. No, I should know it, but I don't.
It was, no idea, Declan? Declan looks like he's looking it up, but I don't think. So it was Jamal Alisi, and that is Eddie Otto, his first attempt. Oh, no, you've had a couple of attempts at the quiz. But Eddie Otto gets the win in today's
victory.
quiz.
I wanted to get all 6, but I'll take the win over Steve and Declan any day, especially Declan.
What you're saying? It's not much to beat Steve.
It's not a huge achievement.
No, it's not. It's like beating the Tigers. It's not very it's not very noteworthy. But anyway, boys,
Steve hasn't won a quiz in 12 years.
So, boys, I assume
who won the tipping comp?
Joel is back at some point this season, Gary, but I'm not 100% sure. I can't say I follow him on socials if he does have socials, but is he coming back this season or not?
I think it's next week or something he gets back. He said he'd be back just after the first Tigers game.
He's changed his name to Brent Naden.
Yeah, Brent Naden. Justin Olam. I think he's announced his retirement this week, Declan. Justin Olam.
Yeah.
It's a shame, isn't it?
Not looking good, is it?
Anyway, boys, we'll be back. I was going to say the Joel podcast Sunday night, but if he's still away, I guess one of us will have to front up and host it. Hopefully it's after a win. If it's after a win, I'll be on. If it's after a loss, no guarantee, Steve, but I'll be here Sunday night.
See you.
Thanks, boys. See you next time.
Thanks, boys.